Guys, please confirm to me. All of you get my voice on screen. Those are attending in online. Guys, please check it. All of you get my voice on screen. Those are attending in online. All of you get my voice on screen. Right. 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 Good morning, guys. And then what we completed there in the last session. So scopes we are discussing there. Then Spring scopes we are discussing. Tell me what are the various scopes which are available in Spring framework? Singleton scope, prototype scope. The next one is session scope, global session scope. The next one is application scope, WebSocket scope. These many scopes are available. So all these are predefined scopes only. But is it possible to define a particular scope in our own way? Is it possible to define the scopes in our own way? That means custom scopes are possible. Yes, it is possible to define custom scopes. What are these custom scopes actually? Yes, it is possible to define our own scopes in a Spring applications by using scope interface and custom scope configurer class. Scope interface and what their custom scope configurer. So right, so now anyway, we are going to understand how we are able to provide this. But to define our own scopes in a Spring framework, I given some information about thread local class. Thread local class. Thread local class here we are going to use thread scope. I'm going to define inside our Spring application. Okay. Right, sir. Now let us understand this thread scope inside our Spring applications. How we are able to prepare this thread scope in our Spring applications. How it is possible to prepare thread scope. Some steps. So let me give that steps now. Then after that we are going to understand clearly. I'll go for that program today. Try to understand this program. Right, sir. What exactly the thread scope here? What exactly the thread scope? No. Up to how many methods my thread is executing, up to that I want to make available my data. I want to give some data in a thread scope. Up to how many methods the thread is executing, up to that methods I want available my data. That's the meaning of the thread scope. In Spring applications, I want to implement a thread scope for each and every bean, for a bean object. Thread scope for bean object means that for every new thread, a new bean object I want to create. Up to now, what we have done there, for every bean definition in the Spring configuration file, we are creating a bean object. That is a singleton. For every request, for the bean, for every call of get bean method, a bean object we are creating. That is a prototype scope. Similarly, in my Java application, for every new thread, a separate bean object I want to create. That is my own scope I want to prepare. Guys, all of you are understanding what is the scenario of this particular custom scopes now? Now let us see this particular point. If you want to do that, prepare a bean class as it is. Hello bean or welcome bean. Testing purpose, any bean class here we can prepare. That's one thing. Next one is after that, what next one here? Configure bean class. Configure bean class in configure bean class in a Spring configuration file. Configure bean class in a Spring configuration file. This is also be very normal, regular program only. Right. Number 3, prepare test class. Prepare test class to check that bean component is working fine or not. Up to this is very common. We don't have any other activities. Now I'm going to give some steps. You know, try to follow these steps. Step number 4. Step number 4. Prepare custom thread local class. Prepare custom thread local class where override. Okay, now I'll give the steps separately. Now inside this override initial value method override initial value method. Override initial value method and return inside this method. What we have written? Return a map object. Return a map object. Here I'm telling to you, this map object is nothing but a scope. Map object is what there? A scope. Scope is nothing but, say, request scope I'm talking. For example, singleton scope I'm talking. What is the meaning of singleton scope? No, singleton scope in the sense a map object we are preparing. We are keeping an object inside the singleton scope in the sense we created a bean object. That bean object we added to map. So every scope is nothing but a map. Bean object is available in this particular scope in the sense storing that bean object in the respective scope with a particular key. Understand my point here? So here what I'm telling there, override initial value method and return a map object. This is like what I'm telling there, a scope. Scope, a particular scope. Map is representing what? A scope. Adding a bean object to the map in the sense keeping a bean object in the particular scope. Okay, fine. This is one point. Number B, after this class is going to be completed. Prepare a custom thread local class. That means here what I'm telling there here, steps I'm telling there. A, declare an user defined class. Next one, B, what I'm telling there, extend thread local class. Extend a thread local class. Then after extending thread local class, then what is this point number C? Override initial value method and return map object. Map object, that is a scope object. That is a scope object. That's it. So these are the various points here we have to understand. Don't worry, I will show programming part for this after preparing this thread local class. Next one is point number 5. Prepare, listen carefully, prepare scope class. Prepare scope class. Don't get any confusion with the map and the scope class. This is scope class to manage the scope objects. The scope class to check and to manage and check the scope objects. See, just it is a map object only, empty map object here. But we have to keep an object inside this map. No, we have to remove that object from the map. To manage these objects inside the scope, there we are going to prepare a separate class. A separate class here we are going to manage. We have to create. Understand my point here? That is nothing but thread scope. I want to prepare like what there? Thread scope. Object I want to specify. Now let's observe this clearly. Prepare a scope class. How we are going to prepare a scope class? Can you observe carefully? First one is like what there? Create an user defined class. Don't worry, in the code I will show everything here, but let me give some idea. Create an user defined class. Then after creating an user defined class, implement scope interface, which is provided by Spring Framework. Scope interface in a user defined class where nearly 4 or 5 methods are available. Get method, set method, remove method, set method, and conversational ID, resolve, context. Some methods are available, 4 or 5 methods are available, but we require only one method, 2 methods max. Get method and remove method. These 2 methods only we require. Remaining methods I don't require. Get method and remove method. Get method in the sense getting the scope object from the scope, getting request object from thread scope, and remove method removing an object from the scope. That's it. Only these 2 methods here we are going to understand. Okay, implement scope interface. Next one is like what there? Implement get method and remove method. Implement get method and remove method in a scope class in the present class. Okay, implement get and remove method in a scope class. Right, sir. Then after that, after implementing that, by this we are able to complete this particular class anyway. Next one, after completion of these classes there, after creating this, and the 6th point is like what I'm telling there. Configure scope class in a Spring configuration file. Configure scope class in a Spring configuration file as a bean. Just like as a bean, we have to configure the scope class inside the Spring configuration file. Next one, after that, what we have to provide there, configure custom scope configurer in a Spring configuration file. Custom scope configurer in a Spring configuration file. Here we have to take. Okay. Then inside this, then what we have to do there? Inside this custom scope configurer is available, which is provided Spring framework. It is a predefined class that we have to configure as a bean. As a bean. Inside this, then what we have to do there? Declare a property with the name scopes. A property tag we have to use where key is what there, key is name is what there, scopes. Inside this property, declare a map by using map tag. Map in the sense collection of entries in a collection framework. Am I right or not? Map is what there, collection of entries. Okay, then inside this, then what we have to do there, declare an entry inside map. Declare an entry inside map. All right, sir. Provide thread scope. Thread scope name. Scope name may be anything. Provide scope name as a key. And what next one here? Here we prepared already, like what there, scope class. We already configured the scope class. Am I right or not? So provide scope name as a key and provide scope class reference as a value in that respective entry. Okay, first of all, configure custom scope configure in a Spring configuration file as a bean. Then inside this, we have to declare like what their scopes. Scopes here we have to declare. Next one is like what there, after that declare a map by using map tag. Inside this map, we have to declare an entry. Inside this entry, key and value we have to provide. Key should be scope name, that is thread, and value should be scope class reference. Already we configured that scope class here inside this one. Okay, now these many things here we have to provide. And the next one is like what, the eighth one is like what now? Provide scope name to the scope attribute in a bean component configuration. In which way we are using scope is equal to prototype for the bean. In which way we are using scope is equal to singleton for the bean. In the same way, now we have to provide thread. Scope name is what, the thread to what, you know, to the respective bean. Okay, don't worry for it. Just I'll explain everything. But these are the overall steps than what we are having. Fine. Let me implement all these things. Anyway, then overall, altogether, what we have to do there. First 3 steps are very common. Regularly we are doing that. Next, we need to prepare custom thread local to provide map object. That map object is acting as a scope object where we are going to keep the bean object, from where we are able to get the bean object. All we are going to do. Inside this, we have to override initial value method. That initial value method will provide a map object. Prepare a scope class by implementing scope interface where we have to override get and remove methods. Remaining methods are not at all required. Okay, there get method in the sense it will check whether this bean object is available inside the scope or not. If the bean object is available inside the scope now, then it will return that. If bean object is not available inside the scope, it will get a bean object. That bean object will be put inside this particular map object. That object we are going to be written. Next one, configure scope class in Spring configuration file as a separate bean. Whatever the scope class here we prepare there, that we have to be configured as a bean inside the Spring configuration file. Next one is a configure custom scope configurer. Custom scope configurer inside the Spring framework, inside the Spring configuration file, where declare a property with the name scopes. It is a map type of property, so we have to open map inside this property tag. Inside this map entry we have to open, where entry for the key for the entry is what there now, scope name. Scope name is what, thread, and value is what there, scope class reference key. That we have to provide. Then after that, provide scope name to the scope attribute in bean component configuration. Then test the application. Test the application, there we are able to get our required content. So anyway, now let me implement this code here. By that we are able to get some clarity, right sir. Now here I'll provide IntelliJ idea. Later on I will use Eclipse also. So for some examples already I shown that how to prepare application, but again I'm going to use that. But first of all, let me complete this one. Let me use this IntelliJ idea. I want to prepare completely a new program, new application here I want to prepare. Try to recognize this. How we are going to prepare projects, guys? Now tell me, file new. What we have to do there? Project. File new project. Now here I need to give some title. Now it would be like what there? app09. The app09 is exist already. 09, it's okay. app10. Alright, sir. Everything is okay, and click on create button. So new window I want to open. Old application I don't want to disturb. The new application here I'm trying to prepare. Now this is my Java project, but I need to make this project as a Spring project or not. To make it as a Spring project, then what we have to do now? Tell me. Right click on project. Then what next one here? Open module settings. Open module settings. Now inside this, then what we have to do there? Click on here dependencies. No, click on plus symbol. Where what we are having there? Libraries. Spring 5 lib is existed. Add selected. Then what next one here? Okay button. In external libraries, if you observe this, Spring 5 lib is existed. Previously it is not existed now. Let me prepare normal program first. Allowbean only. Simple allowbean I want to create now. Right click on SRC and a new package. What's that package here? Com dot Durgasoft.app10 dot beans. Inside this, we have to open new Java bean class here. I have to prepare. Class will be simply saying allowbean. That's it, not more than that. Allowbean. So my intention is to discuss about like what their scope, user defined scope. Nothing about this allowbean. Just I want to take a method, public string, say hello. Then inside this, we are going to return hello user. That's enough. Not more than that. This is my hello bean. My bean is ready. Okay, fine. When bean is ready, then I have to configure that bean in our configuration file or not. There we have to provide the configuration in the configuration file. How we are going to provide this? Right click on SRC, new a package. Inside this, we have to provide com dot Durgasoft.app10 dot config. Here I want to take. Inside this config, I have to prepare new and a file I have to take. What's the file name? You know, spring config dot xml. Spring config dot xml. Then inside this, we record XSD or not? From where we are able to get this XSD? Let us go for the location where our that Spring jar file is extracted. zip file is extracted. Softwares, frameworks, Spring. Inside this Spring framework 5.3.9. Then inside this docs, inside these references, HTML, core. Scroll down. If you scroll down here we are getting like what? No, prologue and as well as like what the XSD. Everything here we have to copy. Now okay, let me paste this. Now here bean tag is ready. Now inside this bean tag we have to provide bean tag is ready. Inside this we have to provide what tag there? Bean. Inside the bean tag what we have to provide there? Now tell me. ID is equal to what is this ID now? Observe carefully. Some hello bean ID. Next one is what their class. What is this class actually? Com dot Durgasoft dot app10 dot config dot beans dot. Then what next one? Hello bean. That everything here we are getting. Now here scope attribute here we have to provide. But so far I did not specify any scope. No. Just wait for it. Let me complete this total part. Then after that, I will implement the scope attribute. All right, sir. Now it is completed. Configuration is also be okay. Then what next one? You know, we have to prepare test application. Right click on SRC and a new a package here we have to provide. Package name would be like what there? Com dot Durgasoft dot abb10 dot test. Now inside this test here we have to provide right click here and the new and a Java class here we have to take. Now it would be like what there? Test. Then inside this class tester main method is required. Okay, now inside this main method, first of all what we have to do now, and we have to create application context. Application context is equal to new class path XML application context. Then inside this application context, then what we have to provide there, com slash Durgasoft slash then what next one, you know, abb10 slash config slash spring configuration spring config.xml com slash Durgasoft slash abb10 slash config spring config.xml. That we completed. Then what next one here we have to do there? Then after completion of these, we have to get bean object or not? Okay, bean object here I'm trying to get. Hello bean here we are going to get. Hello bean. Hello bean is equal to context dot get a bean of some string value here we have to provide. That will be like what there? Hello bean. Now here what we have to provide there? We have to perform typecast. Typecasting here we are performing. So finally here we are getting like what there? S out hello bean dot say hello method. Finish. Now if I run this example, there we are able to get our required output. Run test.java, it will be executed. After execution of this, there we are able to get some output. Hello user, output we are getting. That's okay, fine. My application is running successfully. Up to that, it's okay. By default, it has which scope there? Singleton scope. So only one bean object will be created for a definition. Okay. Let's observe our next content here. Up to this is a normal program. Now I want to define my own scope. If you want to define your own scope, then what we have to do there? Right click on SRC, new and package I want to take. Com dot Durgasoft dot abb10 dot scopes. Package here what I'm taking there? Scopes. Scopes class here we are taking. Inside the scopes package now, let me take a new class. Out of the class name here we have to take there. The class name is what there? Custom thread local. Class what I have taken there? Custom thread local. Custom thread local extends thread local. Extends the thread local. Okay. Inside this extends the thread local. Just we are going to write like only one method, initial value method. Inside this initial value method, what we have to type there? Just return new hash map. Generic type here we provided. That means my initial value method is returning what? Hash map object. Without setting any data, if we call get method internally, automatically which object here we are able to get there, no hash map object here we are getting. Now this is acting as what they know a scope object. In general, singleton scope in the sense it's a map object where objects are going to be stored. Like prototype scope in the sense a separate map object where the objects which are having that prototype scope will be stored. Okay, in the same way here also we are creating hash map object. That hash map object is acting as what now? A scope. Leave it my custom thread local class is completed. Then after that, in the same scopes now, scope class here I need to prepare. Now here I want to prepare a Java class. The Java class name is like what there? Thread scope. Java class name is like what there? Thread scope. Class is created. Now observe carefully. When this class is created, just I want to write implement scope interface available. Arc dot spring framework dot context dot something else here. Scope interface is existed here. When a scope interface is existed, then what we have to do there? All the methods must be implemented or not. What methods here we have to provide there? Right, sir. Now here implement methods. There is an option. If you move the cursor over the terror, implement methods. Alt Shift Enter. What is the shortcut here we have to do there? Alt Shift Enter. Alt Shift Enter. If you click on it, automatically all methods are available. 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute. I think so. The scope is not like this. This is not our scope. Context annotation. No, I don't require this annotation related scope. I required what there. Another scope is required. Yeah, config. This scope is required. Okay. Now get implement methods. What methods get to remove, register, destruction callback, resolve contextual object, get conversational ID. This scope is required. So we have to implement all methods. Of course, get method is able to get, it can be used to get the bean object from the scope. Remove method can be used to remove a bean object from the scope. Register destruction callback. When bean object we are destroying, whenever we are removing bean object from the respective scope, there this method will be executed. Resolve contextual object. When more than one bean object have the same bean ID, have same like what I'm telling is scope ID, there we are able to execute this particular one. Get a conversational ID. Whatever the conversational ID is available common for more than one bean object, the same value will be written here. Leave this one, not required. Just as of now, I record only get method and as well as like what their remove method. Observe carefully, this string s is like what their name, logical name of the bean. Whatever the name is available inside the configuration file, now that is a bean name. Now object factor is like what they know, it able to generate the bean object. What container has created bean object, no? That bean object is provided by this object factory. All right, sir. Now inside this, then what we have to do there? First of all, observe carefully here. First of all, I need to get my map object, scope object here. I need to get map. Inside this map here, what we are able to provide there, string, comma, object. Generic type here we have to provide. Then it would be like what there, scope is equal to, now here. Then what we have to do there inside this, no, before this, custom thread local is equal to new, then what we have to do there, custom thread local. Now here we need to provide like what there, thread local dot initial value method. That's it. Without setting the data, if we call initial value method, so not required to call initial value method. Thread local dot get method. If we call get method, then automatically what happened there? Internally, without setting any data, if you call get method, internal initial value method will be executed. Internally, initial value method will be executed. That initial value method will return that map object in the form of object type, no? That we are typecasted to like what their map object. That everything is okay. Finally, here we are getting map object. That map object is acting as what? A scope. Map object is acting as what? A scope. Okay, fine. Scope here we are able to get. Next one is like what I'm telling there. First of all, whenever we are calling get method, automatically the scope object is going to be, that means automatically bean object has to be written from the scope. But before going to return bean object from the scope, first we have to check whether this bean object is available inside the scope or not. So further purpose here, what I'm telling there, object obj is equal to, then what we have to do there, thread local. That means the scope directly here we have to use like what their scope dot get method of. Here we have to provide that key should be like what their name, whatever the name is existed here. This is like what their get method string name is nothing but name of the object inside this string configuration file. Now object factor is able to provide the respective object if that object is not existed inside the scope. Okay, now here we are trying to get that object here. Now I will check if obj double equals to null. What is the meaning of it? If obj and double equals null in the sense, what is the meaning of it now? If object is not available inside the map, that means if that object is not existed inside the map, then what we have to do now? Then we have to get object from object factor. Object factor is able to prepare that being object. So now here, what I am telling there, obj here obj is equal to object factory dot get object method. Here we have to use automatically. It able to return like what there object if it is available on the base of the name. Here we need to provide like what there get object of name. Name is required. 1 minute now. Any overloaded method for this? Object factory dot get object method. That's it. Not required to provide any name. Already we are checking with this particular name only. Current bean object only we are checking there. Not required to call. Now we are getting it. Whenever we are getting object from the configuration file, that we have to put inside the scope. Now here what we are do there, scope dot put off. Scope dot put off. Then what we have to put there? Then key value pair here we have to put. What is the key value pair here we have to put there? Just observe carefully. Already key is available in the form of name, comma obj with the same key that we have to put. That's okay, completed. And finally, whatever the bean object we try to add to the scope now, that value here we have to return. That would be like what there obj. Return obj. That's it. Now this is the implementation of like what there get method. All of you understand this clearly? What I am telling to you know. This is like what the thread scope. Okay. Whenever we are trying to access get method, get a bean method, internally this get method will be executed. Inside this get method, what I have done there, first we checked it in our scope that bean object is available or not. If bean object is available, return that object difference. Bean object is not available inside this particular scope, no. Create a bean, get a bean object and keep that bean object inside like what their scope. Then return that bean object. Okay, for that purpose, first of all, we are trying to get the object from scope. If object is not existed, get the object from Spring configuration file and keep that object inside the scope and return that object now. Okay, else part is not required. If it is available, then return the same object. Else part is not required. Then directly here we've written like what now? If part only. Observe carefully. Object factory is able to get the bean object which is created by container. For every bean application context is creating bean object or not. So that bean object we are able to get with is what there object factory. Okay, this is what exactly the meaning of get method, what we implemented there. After implementing this get method, then what next one here I'm telling to you, observe carefully. Remove method here we have to provide. Now object to obj is equal to, then what we have to do there now inside this, say for example, scope dot remove method, remove of name we have to provide. Already parameter is what their name of the bean what we want to remove, then return like what their obj. Which bean object is removed there, that we are returning. Which bean object we return there, that we return here. Answer my point here. Which bean object we removed there, that we return. So this is that implementation part for both of the content. Sir, are you getting my point or not? So up to this, just we implemented thread scope class. Okay, fine. When we complete this thread scope class now, remaining methods are not required, just only get method and remove method. That's okay. Next one is I need to go for Spring configuration file. Inside this Spring configuration file, here we have to define that the thread scope class configuration here we have to provide. Thread scope configuration. All right, sir. Now here we have to go for like what their bean tag. Inside this bean tag, we have to provide like what their ID is equal to scope. Then what this one get thread scope, for example. Thread scope. Now get value. This is like what their thread scope. Here we have to prepare there. Now here what we have to do there, if you want to provide this thread scope, no, inside this bean class attribute is required. Class here we have to provide. Then what about this class here? Com dot Durgasoft dot ABP 10 dot. Then what we have to prepare there? No scopes. Inside the scopes, then what we are having there? Custom, no, thread scope. Thread scope here we have to define. Am I right or not? No. Thread scope directly we are providing. No? Now, before this thread scope, okay, thread scope here we prepared. Okay, thread scope. That's okay, fine. And next one is after that, we need to configure like what there. Bean tag here we have to take. Now, inside this bean tag, first of all, here what we have to provide there, ID is equal to scope configurer. Scope configurer that we provided here. Next one is the class should be is equal to arg dot spring framework dot. Then what next one here? Arg dot spring framework dot. We have to prepare like what there? What we have to prepare there? Custom scope configurer. Not required to worry for this. What's the fully qualified name? Custom scope configurer. Right, sir. We are getting that custom scope configurer or not? As a help, we are getting there. Directly you can select it. Arg dot spring framework dot beans dot factory dot context. Like this here, we are getting custom scope configurer. Inside this custom scope configurer, we need to take a property. What's the name of the property here? No scopes property here we have to take. Inside this scopes property here we have to define like what there a map. Inside this map here we have to define like what there an entry. Entry here we define. Inside this entry, what we need to have there now? Tell me. Then key. Key is required. Key is what here now is a thread. What is the scope name? Exact scope name is the thread scope. Thread I am taking there. Next one is that value ref here we have to take. Value ref here we have to take. What is this value ref is able to take? No ID of the another bin. Value ref is able to take like what ID of the another bin which is being in here, being configured inside the configuration file. So now here I have to provide like what there thread scope. So your scope name, original scope name is what there thread. That is reference to what there no thread scope. Thread scope is what there no thread scope object. Right, sir. So all the configurations here we completed. Then after this, now what is the name of the scope here? No thread. Thread is the name of the scope. Object is available with what there thread scope anyway. So now here in the bean, hello bean is existing now. For this hello bean, here we have to provide like what their scope. Scope is equal to then what we have to provide there no thread. Now this hello bean is available which scope here no thread scope. Hello bean is available which scope no thread scope. Right, sir. Completed. This part is completed. Everything is okay. Now we have to test this application. We have to test this application. How we are able to test this application there? Go for test.java. All of you observe clearly. Now say hello. I don't want to display this one. Just I want to display hello bean. Object is going to be created or not, or maybe any error is coming or not. Now let me check it. Let me run it. Right, sir. One object is created or not? Tell me, guys, one object is created or not? Okay. Now tell me, how many threads are acting now in our application? Main program. In main program, how many threads are executing? Only one thread or not? Only one thread only. Only one thread. Main thread. Just we execute our program, only main thread is running our program. So, but our concept is what there for every thread a separate bean object has to be created or not? For this main thread, one bean object is created. Right, sir. For main thread, one bean object is created. Alright, sir. For main thread, one bean object is created in the sense. Now I want to call. This is like what there hello bean one. This is like what there hello bean one. Now tell me overall how many times we called this one? overall 3 times we are calling this hollow bean 1. If the scope is a prototype, how many bean objects will be created here? 3 bean objects will be created. If the scope is singleton, how many bean objects will be created here? No, 1 bean object will be created. Anyway, now let me check this example also. So here we are going to get only 1 bean object. 3 times only 1 bean object is going to be created. Single bean object or multiple bean objects now? Single bean object. Now observe carefully, for every new thread, a separate bean object will be created. That's our concept here. Now I want to create a new thread. Through that new thread, I want to access this get bean method. I need to create new thread. Through this new thread, I am going to access the what there get bean method. Let me check this. For that purpose, then what I am telling to you, new thread. Understand this? How I'm going to be created new thread? No, just by using anonymous inner class for runnable interface. So new thread I prepared. Inside this new thread, new runnable interface, anonymous inner class. Then inside this run method, I want to access this one. But here I want to provide, this is like what already 3 objects are taken there. Fourth one. Now this is a 5th one. Now this is a 6th one. 6. Now anyway, after displaying these objects, I'll display some space. Observe carefully. It's just we created thread class only, but we have to start the thread or not? Thread class I have taken. Inside this thread class, anonymous inner class for runnable I have taken. Inside this run method, we are trying to access get bean method. Now I'm asking guys, all of you observe carefully. Here, how many threads are executing in this program? Come on, 2 threads are executing. One is a main thread. This is user defined thread. New thread dot start method user defined thread. But to this new thread runnable implementation I provided. Inside this runnable, I accessed get bean method. In the main thread, see if you observe this point here clearly, main thread will execute get bean method with a hello bean 1, hello bean 2, hello bean 3. Up to that main thread will execute. But here we created user defined thread in the next attempt, where user defined thread is calling get bean method. User defined thread is calling get bean method. Now this get bean method is called by user defined thread. It able to return bean object. So here what we have to check, 2 threads are executing. Main thread is calling get bean method where 1 bean object will be generated. User defined thread is calling get bean method where another bean object has to be generated. As per our concept, for each and every bean a separate bean object has to be generated, and for each and every thread. For each and every thread a separate bean has to be generated. That is our actual concept. So for main thread, 1 bean object. For user defined thread, another bean object has to be sorted. Let us try for this. I'm trying to display that bean references, no, so that you can understand same bean object or different bean object. If it is same bean, okay, our concept is wrong. Somewhere else we have done the mistake where I have to correct it. If you are getting different bean objects, no, definitely our topic is right. For every thread, we are creating a separate new bean. No. Let me check this. Now let me run this example here. Same we are getting. Whenever we are getting same, definitely our program is not working. Somewhere else we have done the mistake. Where we have done the mistake, now let me check this. Give 2 minutes of time, guys. Now let me check it. One minute. Okay. Custom scope configurer. Yes, sir. Here, no. Thread scope. We provided same thread scope. Mm, 1 minute. 1 minute. Just give 2 minutes of time. Let me check it. Where is the problem here? Custom thread local. Now it's okay. It is returning hash map object. That's okay. Fine. Thread scope class is important for us. So public class thread scope implements the scope and custom thread local. New custom thread local. Initial value get method. We are getting the scope object. Object obj is equal to scope dot get name. If obj double equals to null, what you are trying to do there? Obj is equal to object factory or get object. Get object we are getting there. Then scope dot put of name comma obj. We are putting inside this. Then we return obj. Remove method is okay. Just we checked it to remove that object. Okay, now here that everything is okay. Map object here we are getting. Okay, fine. So here we don't have any problem. Just whenever it is calling get method, when we call this get bean method, internally get method will be executed. This get method is checking whether this bean object is available or not inside the scope. If it is not existed, keep that bean object inside the scope and return that object. If it is existed already, return that object now directly. There's a logic here we implemented. Same logic. In a scope configurer, custom scope configurer. Actually, scope configurer here we can provide. This is a thread scope. Thread scope here we provided. Inside this thread scope, same implementation here we provided here. Thread scope. Now here value ref here we provided. Thread scope only here we provided. Entry is a thread scope. So scope is equal to thread we applied. There is a problem. Scopes. Property name is what there? Scopes. Let me take this point here. Public hello bean. Right, sir. I think program is right. Everything is right. Conceptual everything is right. But let me check it. Hello bean initialization. Same bean object is returning. But for every new thread, it has to create a separate object. What you are displaying actually? Hello bean 4, 5, and 6. 1 minute. For example, if I provide singleton is okay, same thing. Prototype if I provide different objects we are getting. Now it's okay. Prototype is working. Now here inside this prototype, then what we have to provide after this thread scope is what the thread scope. Here we provided thread. Key is a thread. Scopes is okay. Map entry key is a thread. Value ref is what the thread scope. All right, sir. 1 minute. 1 minute. check it once again. Then where is the problem here? Configuration file, any changes here? Custom scope configurer, not mandatory to take this custom scope configurer, any name here we can use. Bean id is equal to thread scope, class is equal to thread scope only, scopes dot thread scope. For example, bean name is equal to, then here I want to provide custom thread scope, custom thread local. Class is equal to com dot Durgasoft dot AVB 0 dot. And then here scopes we have to provide dot custom thread local. Is it required internally? Not required. No. Only one time object is creating, same object is returning as per the default scope. Right, in the configuration file, any mistake? id is equal to hello bean, com.durgasoft.app10 beans.hellobean, scope is equal to thread. Scope, no? Is it scope or scopes? Scopes, I think so. Exception we have to get. Do you mean scopes? So it means that it is saying clearly it is not scope. It is like what are their scopes? Scopes only. Map, entry, key is a thread, value ref is thread scope. Okay, then 1 minute. Thread we provided. 1 minute, sir. 1 minute. Now thread scope. Inside this thread scope, object obj is equal to scope dot get of name. Name is available. If obj double equals to null, object is equal to object factory dot get object. Scope dot put of name comma obj. Then return obj. First of all, let me check whether this flow of execution is coming to this intersection or not. Let me check it. Right, sir. Now inside get method of thread scope class. That flow of execution is coming to like what there inside get method of thread scope, like this we are getting every time. Right, now it's okay. Now what I'm telling there, then after that we provide it. Now scope dot get of name, scope dot get of name, scope, where is that scope actually? Here we are getting scope from thread local dot get hash map object, here we are getting there. Inside this hash map object we are checking if that object is available, it's okay. Object is not available, then we have to do, then where we have to create this actually, I think in outside we created this, I think so. Now here we have to create inside this method, maybe there is a problem. 1 minute, 1 minute. Okay, where we are getting error. Okay, 1 minute, sir. Every time calling of this get method, we need to get a fresh object. Why? Because up to that thread only here we have to check. That's why here I'm telling there. Listen carefully. Now this time. Now we are getting right output. The location where I created that map object is a different. If I give that map object in outside of the method, no, then what will happen? Directly at the time of first time itself, the map object is having some bean, no? Okay, then same map object is available for all the threads. When we call and we create a thread, every time it is accessing like what there bean object is available inside the scope or not, but is a class level variable. So for all the threads, that bean object is available or not. That's why bean object is available. The same bean object reference value is written. But here the point is what? For every thread we have to create a separate like what I'm doing there map object. Inside this only we have to check. See, in the first attempt here we are getting this. Observe carefully what I'm telling to you. First, this part is executed by main thread or not? This part is executed by main thread. Whenever main thread is created, whenever this part is executed by main thread, no, automatically it is checking in the scope bean object is available or not. Assume it the variable, that means that scope we created at what there no class level. When main thread is checking bean object is available or not. Initially bean object is not available. We created bean object and we kept that bean object in the scope object. The scope object is available where no scope object is available at class level. Okay, good. Second time we are calling get bean. Again checking bean object is available. Now this time available, written the same. Third time we are getting bean object by the main thread. There also be checking bean object is available or not. Available, written that bean object. Okay, main thread is okay. Next one is what there. Now main thread is executing that user thread, child thread. User thread is executing. When user thread is executing, whenever we are calling get method, other thread get bean method, not main thread. Now again we have to create a new scope object. A new scope object here we have to create. Am I right or not? Another scope object here we have to create. Inside the scope object, then what we have to do there? Again we have to create. Again we have to check whether this bean object is available with respect to this particular thread scope or not. Previously main thread scope object is available. Now this time it is what now? User thread scope has to be created. Inside this user thread scope now, it has to check bean object is available or not. But if we declare the scope as a class level variable, that scope object is common for every thread. Already main thread kept already one bean. So now in the case of user thread, when we call get bean method, it is checking in the same scope now. Already bean object is available, returning that bean object. But if we create a separate scope object with respect to the user thread now, when we call get bean method, then it able to check bean object is available. Now bean object is not available. New bean object is created. New bean object is kept inside the scope with respect to user thread, then return that object now. Answer my point. Now again here, second time when we call this get bean method, now this time again it will check in now user thread related scope object, not main thread related scope object. User thread related scope object where it will check bean object is available or not. Okay, then it able to return that one. Again here, third time when we call get bean method, again this get bean method will check user thread related scope object is inside this bean object is available or not. Not available, it will keep that. If it is available, it will return that object. For example, see, I want to give much clarity. Now try to understand it. Same code, I want to repeat once again. But this time I want to say, yes, observe this clearly. This time I am saying like what there, a separate might be another thread is created. Now tell me overall, how many threads are executing in this program here? 3 threads are executing this program or not? Okay, if I run this example, then what we are able to get now, all 3 times, 3 objects are created or same object is created now. This is first one. Hello bean initiation one time. Hello bean instantiation second time. Hello bean instantiation third time. 3 different objects we are getting or not. That means if you want to see the same topic in diagrammatic representation, observe carefully. Now tell me overall. Observe carefully. This is a thread 1. Okay. This is a thread 2. And another thread here I want to create there. This is a thread 3. Overall. How many threads we created? No, 3 threads we created. Thread local will be created for each and every thread or not? A separate local will be created for each and every thread or not? Okay. Observe carefully. This is one scope object with respect to thread 1. Now this is a T1 scope. Next one. This is like what there? T2 thread. Here again, what we are having there, no, this is like what I am telling to you, T2 thread scope. T2 scope, it's a map object basically. Map object, the scope objects are nothing but what there? Map objects. Now this time, it will be like what there? T3 thread. It is like what there? T3 thread. With respect to T3 also, separate local will be created inside the scope object is existed. Now this is exactly like what there? T3 scope. Okay. Understand clearly what I'm telling to you now. For example, first when T1 thread encounter get bean method, get bean of some name. When T1 thread encounter get bean of name. Now here what happened there? What did you checking now? In the T1 scope, bean object is available or not? Not available as of now. Then it will create a bean object inside this T1 thread with the name is like what there? Hello bean. Simply I want to say HB for our understanding purpose, hello bean. Created and it will return the same bean object. Meanwhile, if we access get bean method of same name or different name, leave it. If we provide this time, then inside this, it will check whether bean object is available in thread 2 scope. If we are checking still, if we are checking thread 1 scope, no, bean object is available. That we have done the mistake previously. Second thread, with respect to second thread, bean object is available or not in the thread 1 scope we are checking. Why? Because we declared that hash map object in outside of the get bean method. Get method. That means common for every thread. Okay. Now here we have to check in the thread 2 related scope. If it is available, get it and use that. If it is not available, then what we have to do? Create new thread object that we have to keep inside like what they know. Create new bean object. We have to keep that inside this. Now HB. Now similarly, if we access get bean method, if we access get bean method of name on a thread that again here this container will check bean object is available or not in the thread 3 scope. Bean object is not available, so create a new bean object and send that new bean object to the scope. Then after that, return that bean object. Now previously bean object is not available, now it is created. All of you get my point or not? Okay, this is okay, nice. Next, observe carefully. Again, I'm coming to the T1 thread. Again, I'm coming to the T1 thread. Inside this T1 thread, again, if I call get bean of name, again, if we call this, now tell me, whenever we are calling get bean of name, now application context will search for this bean object in which one, in which scope now? T1 related scope only. Now this time the T1 related scope, bean object is available or not? Available, written that reference now. Next, whenever we are calling again get bean method over T2 thread, when T2 thread is executing get bean method again, same name. Now again what it able to check now? It able to check whether bean object is available in or not. In which scope now? T2 scope. Bean object is available, written that object reference. Similarly, whenever we are calling again get bean method, now this time application context container will check bean object is available inside the T3 scope or not. If it is available, then that object will be written. If it is not available, new object will be created that will be assigned to the bean object. That's it. Now tell me, how many bean objects are created now? For each and every thread, a separate bean object is created or not? How many threads are available? 3 threads are available. 3 scopes are created. 3 locals are created. So 3 separate bean objects at each and every local we are getting it or not? So for each and every thread, a separate bean object is created. So this is the meaning of like what there thread scope. That is our user defined scope. Thread scope is what there user defined scope. Not more than this. Now this is what exactly the point here I'm telling to you about this thread scope. Now we can prepare any number of threads. Now we can prepare any number of threads. The threads are accessing that get bean method. Definitely a new thread will be created, new scope, new object will be created in the scope. That new object will be written, new bean object will be written. That's it, guys. Now this is total information about like what there totally thread scope. Then how to implement user defined scopes in our Spring applications. That's okay. Then after that, after completion of this user defined scopes and next one here, we have to go for bean life cycle. Next one. By this and before that, XML configurations are completed. Beans XML configuration is completed. Next we have to go for like what there? Java based configurations. Java based configurations we are going to understand. The Java based configurations and annotation based configurations we are going to understand in tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll discuss about this content. There we are able to see the total bean configuration details in the Java. After that, annotation related configurations. One by one we are going to understand. That's all, guys. That's all for today. And tomorrow you'll see the remaining content. I will start this Java based configuration and bean lifecycle. Thank you. Right. See, Abhishek. See, only one bean object will be created. The same bean object will be written even if you use ID or even if you use name attribute. If we use name attribute or if you use ID attribute, in both the cases, the same bean object will be written. Okay. Difference between ID and name is what there. Just ID attribute will take single identity. Name attribute will take multiple identities. That only the difference. This Sunday. This Sunday. Yeah, I'll take it. Any issue? Any issue? I'll take it. I'll take it. వస్తున్నాయి కదా రావట్లేదా హర్ష వీడియోస్ ఓకే థ్యాంక్స్ అలాట్. ఏమో ఎట్లా అయిపోయినావు?